Hello and welcome to everyone joining us today. My name is Doug Picklick. I'm an editor with the construction group of publications at Annex Business Media, and it's my pleasure to be hosting this on-site magazine panel discussion, Tech Trajectory, Construction Plots Its Course. I'd first like to thank our sponsors for today's session, Autodesk and GC Pay. Thank you for your support. As we all know, the construction industry is continually evolving, and technology is playing a greater role in day-to-day activities, especially now as the almost post-pandemic building market ramps up. The industry's rapid embrace of new tools such as building information modeling, cloud-based collaboration, estimating and payment management platforms, job site sensors, drones, virtual reality, and much more have already begun moving the goalposts on expectations on the business side of the industry and during design and construction. To remain on the cutting edge, Canada's leading contractors are making technology choices today that will dictate how the industry tackles projects throughout the 2020s and beyond. I'm happy to be joined today by representatives from Bockstael Construction, EllisDon and Turner Construction. Our conversation will run for about 45 minutes and we'll leave plenty of time for a question and answer session at the end. So for everyone with us today, please feel free to type your questions into the Q&A tab. You should see a Q&A icon along the bottom of your screen. There's also a chat icon there, but please try and put the questions into the Q&A tab so we're sure to see it. Before I begin, I'd like to introduce our panelists today. I'm going to start with Libby Rowe. She's the manager of business development and project development for Turner Construction in Vancouver, as well as an innovation champion for the company. Trained and experienced as an engineer, writer, project manager, and a sales and marketing lead, Libby brings a unique perspective and approach to maximizing the potential of spaces through technology, communication, and teamwork. Hamad Chaudhry is currently the Director of Virtual Design and Construction, responsible for EllisDon's projects in Western Canada. Working with BIM and digital workflows on projects, Hamad's role is to implement VDC tools to provide the necessary balance between technology, innovation, and economic efficiency. Hamad strives to implement technology to offer appropriate and novel solutions to construction problems. And finally, Dan Bockstael is the Vice President of Pre-Construction at Bockstael Construction, a fourth-generation family-owned business based in Winnipeg. To keep this central builder on the cutting edge, Dan has helped drive its adoption of modern tools and processes such as BIM and lean target value delivery. Hello to you all, and thank you for joining us today. I'd like to begin the discussion. Thanks, guys. I'd like to begin today's discussion with what's working for your teams right now with respect to the implementation of technology tools. And Hamad, I'm going to start with you and ask, what are the latest tools you're using in the virtual design and construction workflow space that are proving most beneficial, and why?
Perfect. Thanks, Doug. So yeah, generally speaking, for the VDC or virtual design and construction side, kind of the proven tool set that we've been using with the Autodesk kind of workflow, whether that's Revit, Navisworks, so on and so forth, that's still quite a bit there. But where we found a lot more success is using, Vervitso, which is an integrated collaboration platform, you could call it, which has really helped get that model information into the field and, for the lack of a better word, kind of democratize that BIM VDC process for more of the, as I like to call it, no disrespect, engineers or kind of, the techie folk to more of the average, member of our teams. Another great thing from our perspective is a tool called FieldWire, which, they're making advancements more so now within that VDC side. They have like a model viewer and all that kind of stuff, but their focus of the document control, the punch list, and kind of controlling more of those standard procedures, but still using more of the cutting edge technology, so mobile phones and 360 photos and stuff like that. Apart from that, I mean, it's not a wide array of success, but reality capture tools have provided a lot of value too. So, we've got a tool called Sin2, which lets, point clouds be shared on the web a lot easier, compare that to the model and do some sort of heat map analysis pretty quickly. There's tools traditionally by like Leica and all of those, which have been available. And then also for the drone data and kind of looking at that. So, we use a few different tools, but like site scan, propeller, drone deploy, all of those kind of ingest that data and provide it pretty easily to the site teams. So I think from a VDC standpoint, those are kind of some of the key tools. On the fringe, I do want to mention that a really key part for us now is information, of course. So not just about the 3D models, but the data that lives in those models. So looking at different platforms, it could be in a kind of a very rigid scripted format like Kobe, where you're just collecting spreadsheets, or implementing more sophisticated software like DROFIS, where it actually structures the data, talks to your models and spreadsheets. So I think that was a little bit kind of long-winded, but gives you a good answer.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. And just Hamad, when we're talking of the projects, these are pretty large scale projects we're talking about, right?
Yeah, generally for exactly like the ones that are using Sin2 or DROFIS or any of those kind of platforms are very large generally. But some of the projects where we're using Rivet, so FieldWire, so on, they're part of our normal kind of projects, could be anywhere from a $5 to $20 million project, which is still large, but compared to the $500 million, $1 billion hospitals, I mean, not a significant project value comparatively.
Thank you very much. Libby, I'm hoping you can tell us some recent technology innovations being implemented at Turner, either pre-construction or on-site.
Sure, I'll add a few more to Hamad's fairly lengthy list. Obviously, there's a lot of duplication, so I'll try not to duplicate. One of the ones that we've been really having some great success with recently is the model-based estimating. And so, of course, we use that early on in the process in the pre-construction side of things. And the great thing about it is really being able to get real visual data and real data. And then when you track the change throughout the project or through the pre-construction development, just being able to see that change in the model and actually have it automatically change in the spreadsheets. That's been a really great, nothing wild, but it's been really great using that. The other one, we sort of have a very wide range of projects, but on some of our interiors work, we've been finding there's been a lot of uptake in laser scanning. And I'm not sure if this is coming out of the broker community where they're sort of saying there's this newfangled tool called laser scanning and it's the be all and end all. But what we're finding is we're going in as soon as a space is essentially demoed, as soon as we can see ceiling spaces. And we have 6 projects right now that we're laser scanning just in downtown Vancouver. And you literally get a 360 capture of all of the services, which you can then clash against your models and get very real data. And it just helps the course of the project, especially if the project's been designed in Revit and clash detection and whatnot. And then I think the other one that I wanted to chat about, I was trying to pick my top 3, is the 360 capture. And really this happened with, I say COVID forced this, right? We're already going down this route, but with COVID-19, of course, we couldn't get people onto sites. We still needed to keep building. We still need to get information out to the stakeholders. So we moved forward with a platform called Struction Site, and we use this to take 360 images. So whether this is capturing as-built data, whether this is for our weekly reports, whether this can even just be for construction tours, site visits for stakeholders that are not next door. And I think this is something that we're going to continue with because it's been a really, really great platform. And of course, it's got all these extras, right? It feeds into our Procore system, which we use. I think that's probably similar to FieldWire. And you can also work in scenarios where you're actually physically on site and you're having this sort of, I don't want to say VR, AR per se, but it's this extended reality where you're kind of doing reviews with a group on site with this technology and seen the model as well. So I'd say those are sort of the top three that have really, I think, taken off in the last year.
Awesome. And Dan, what new technology implementations are working well today at Bockstael?
Yeah, so I think, from our perspective, we're kind of in that mid-sized firm range, our revenues in the sort of 150 million range. So a little bit of a different approach to technology in some cases with being a little bit, having to be a bit more agile or sort of light in some of the adoption in some areas, but and really looking for opportunities that can add value right away. I think one of the things we're often looking for is really that technology needs to be scalable. I mean, we're doing projects from 500,000 to 100 million. So when we adopt something, we look at something that can really help us across the board. I think there is a requirement, for all contractors to really be VDC capable at this point. I mean, so we are on stream with Autodesk and BIM capabilities as far as clash detection, visual planning, those types of tools. We're using that for a lot of products are starting to use the A360 sort of platform there with sort of the collaborative approach. But collaborative platforms has definitely been a big thing for us lately. It was accelerated by COVID. I think similar to what Libby was saying, I think it really pushed things along. I mean, we went from, a marker board for, estimating assignments and planning and sort of CM to-do list to Microsoft Planner, Microsoft Teams, and that all had to happen within a few weeks. And we're really finding a lot of benefit out of that. It's going to last. We're not going back to the old way as far as some of the benefits we're seeing with just having that shared resource and having a bit more mobility in the workforce now too. And then similarly on the ops side, we were basically had as far as the field resource tracking, it was a lot of magnet sort of boards moving people around visually. We moved over to Labor Chart, which is an online service for that. As far as resource tracking, basically sites are able to put in their projected resource planning, call for resources, and we can model it out several months down the road. So that's been pretty good. And then also on the business side, one thing that was ongoing, for the last I think over a year now for us is actually a platform called Quote to Me, which is around digital procurement. So it's basically streamlining the request for quote, purchase order, right down to packing slip tracking, basically having that happening through a digital platform from a third party provider, not having to build those resources in-house. That's going quite well. They're sort of revving up the capability on that platform, and we're kind of enhancing our use of it as we go along. And then, on the enterprise level too, Procore has been big for us. I think we've hit 2 years on that platform now. Certainly big gains in visibility, tracking, oversight, and then also collaboration, record keeping, and project data.
Okay, so you've all got a lot going on. Obviously, your digitalization roadmaps are being established, and you're on the road. So we kind of want to know where we see things heading in the next couple of years, either again on the business side of operations or on site. And as far as next steps, does anyone have any pilot programs in place that you can share? These things, I believe the adoption of technology needs to be somewhat incremental. You can't just launch into something right away out the gate. But Dan, maybe we'll start with you this time, and just, is there something, a new element that you're starting out with?
Yeah, I think with us, it's all about efficient use of data is kind of where we see the long-term trend happening, and kind of what, there's a lot of positioning in the industry around that, and how to basically efficiently collect data, process it, and communicate it so that it's useful. As far as, how to implement that and piloting it, I mean, we're running some things through Procore and different platforms, but it's really around trying to take that data and develop predictive tools versus having those things just be a historical record. So, whether you're capturing RFI data, change orders, root causes, all those types of things, whether it's related to constructability reviews, quality checks, and putting that into a place where you can actually, use it as a preventative tool down the road or an optimization tool. Similar on the cost modeling side, that's been really big for us. Libby mentioned it too, like whether it's through 3D models or even just through sort of a algorithm type based approach, but requires a lot of cost data, inventorying that, whether it's high level cost per square foot data down to, actual current material supply numbers, or, really having that cost data at hand so that you can we're big on modeling. Target value delivery through the lean platform is big for us. So it's all about building the budget right at the start, from the concept stage, and then managing the design and the cost, the budget of the project in line with that target value as you go through. So you need really good data to support that target cost that you benchmark right at the beginning. So we're going through some processes now around cataloging that data. Some of the other things too that have been pretty cool. One software we've implemented, we've got a project where we're doing a building envelope restoration on a 50-year-old, the Centennial Concert Hall in Winnipeg, so a bit of a showpiece facility. So they've got a 50-year-old concrete precast facade. So we've implemented it's called Matrak, M-A-T-R-A-K, basically a mobile asset tracking platform where we've individually tagged every single piece of precast on that building, because each piece needs to go back to its original place. Some of the pieces need to go in for repairs. Some of them, are just sitting in storage. So basically with this system, you fix a weatherproof label to the panel and you're able to track its progress. You can go online, see what stage it's at, where it's physically located, and able to produce sort of visualizations of, you take the building elevation drawings and you can produce that overlay with each panel, whether it's been repaired, whether it's in storage, or whether it's been installed on the building. So it's cool things like that. A lot of sort of QR code type stuff too, playing into Procore in a lot of situations, making that data entry easier on site by having QR codes in different areas where guys can just scan those with the phone versus having to, and it takes them right to the, whether it's a deficiency markup or something like that. Yeah.
Okay. Libby, are you piloting new things at Turner?
We are. We actually have a very formal pilot program, and this is, Turner is a very large North American company. So this is sort of based out of our headquarters, and then all the different locations basically get an opportunity to participate in the pilots. And I was trying to think about, we've obviously got many going on, and essentially what we do is we partner with tech startups, and we kind of look at the ones that we think will provide the best benefits sort of against our own criteria. And then we work with them to kind of figure out if the technology is going to work. We have a lot of projects for them to test, and often the biggest problem with the startups is they don't have a real space to test their technologies. And you've got to run it through all different project sizes to actually figure out if you've got a good solution. And I think it's no secret that the construction tech investments right now are astronomical. I mean, I think we're just watching this. I think it doubles investments in any other technology, in any other industry. So everyone's kind of waiting and watching. And really Turner's position in this is we are a construction company. And so we have an ability to test these sort of new solutions in pilot programs in a real fake space, if that makes sense. And the one that I think's got the most traction recently, we put out on social media, is a little dog called Spot, and it's a pilot program with Boston Dynamics. And Spot essentially lays out, so if you think about, I think they've used it in an interior space, and so if you just think about doing all the layout, the field layout, so taking it off the plans, using the GPS system, and this dog essentially goes and lays out all the walls. So it's not working fully independently yet, but I think it's on its way. We've run that through a number of pilots. And so that one's kind of fun. And I think, there's a few other ones too, obviously, but I like that one because I think it shows the future in that we're not replacing humans, we're augmenting them, right? So we're taking away some of those really boring, really repetitive tasks that could just as easily be done with a robot. You still need the human to sort of review the data, to walk through, to double check things, to build the design in the first place. There's so many pieces that we still need humans for, but we're really seeing the opportunity for spaces to create predictability, better productivity, enhancing human sort of involvement, and really creating safer environments. We have another pilot, and it's about, it's essentially I shouldn't call it a gizmo, but it is, and you attach it to a crane, and it picks up the data from an entire construction site. And similar to what Dan was saying, you know, just by having that data over an entire construction site gives you, the goal is that we can start to use it for predictive safety. And so that someone could be sort of saying, hey, like, watch out for this in this zone, this is going to happen, this could potentially happen, there's a high probability this could happen. And so creating the ability to avoid, you know, potential challenges. And you could see this in terms of productivity or safety or things like this. So I think there's a lot of exciting technologies that we are piloting right now.
Very good. Yeah, I like the safety. It doesn't get talked about a lot, but that's very, very good. Hamad, what can you share with us about EllisDon?
Yeah, no, that's some great insight from Dan and Libby there. I think just quickly, you know, Libby mentioned it earlier too with the 360 photography. You know, we're trying to roll out, or we have rolled out this 360 platform from a company called Cupix, and we're using that on one of our larger design build hospitals. And idea there being, you know, there's an alternative, let's just call it, to traditionally a large kind of conglomerate that we really get spec'd out from our clients. So it's just seeing, can we provide the requirements that we typically would hire this third party by using the software and performing that as self-work? And so far, I mean, whether it's a 360 photo of your model, like Libby was saying, or drone data, all of that kind of can live in that platform, and our team on site can actually go and capture the data and all of that. So Cupix is one right off the top of my head. I think that is a good one to mention for a pilot right now. But apart from that, yeah, we definitely are looking. And there's a lot of areas within construction technology, whether you're looking at the traditional 2D to 3D kind of space, or you're getting more towards the AI and machine learning. So I think that we will kind of, as Libby mentioned, see a lot more of those coming forward, and pilots may be coming to the foreground as the funding's actually kind of matching up to that tech industry level now.
Right. Yeah. Well, okay. So you're all involved in the implementation of new technologies with your teams. And I believe we all assume the investment in new technology is really just a cost of doing business today, with objectives of like reducing waste, speeding up process, improving collaboration, and improving on-site safety as well. So how does a contractor measure the success or failure of a new technology integration? And Libby, I was going to start with you this time, and just maybe you could share some ideas on how do you know if it's working or going to work or not?
Oh, this is a really tricky one, and I'm actually curious to hear what everyone has to say on this one. The challenge is, the best space for innovation for technology is in prevention of problems, right? We've been in this industry for a long time. We know how slow it can be, how onerous it can be, how costly it can be, how schedules can slide if you don't plan properly and predict properly. So of course, if you bring in a technology that targets that, how do you quantify it, right? How do you quantify the problem that hasn't happened? And, you know, right now I'm in more of a sales and marketing role, and that's often my, you know, you get all these RFPs and it's saying, you know, how do you use innovation, and you know, the owners saying, why do I want to use VDC? What does that do for me? And you kind of say, oh, well, it helps your budget and your schedule. And they say, well, how much, right? If I pay X amount more per se, how much am I going to get on the return on investment? And I mean, I can throw out 1,000 algorithms at you and pretend I know the answer to that, and they're just that. They're guesses. But by all that, by saying all that, I mean, there is a marketing side to it. But the truth is, it saves time. It saves people. You know, I use that example of a robot. I mean, if we didn't have that robot, it's a human doing that, maybe 3, and they might not get it right. So then you've got the quality factor in there, and the cost of redoing. You know, I used to, for 2 years, I spent my career doing quality management and quality assurance. And it was the same question. It's, well, how do you put a value on that? Why would I pay for quality? And, you know, I recorded someone chipping, I got into this habit of recording people chipping stairs, And I would count the number of people and the number of days. And it was often because it was beside my office and it was so loud. And so one day I just went out and videoed it. And so when people asked that question, I would just show them the video of 3 people chipping out stairs. And you're just like, this is expensive. This is really expensive. You know, we are doing something on a more concrete basis called BIM track. And we're using that to try and track, really you track the number of clashes you have, and you assume that every clash you have is a problem prevented. I think that's one of the more simple ways of doing it. But I think it was Dan that alluded to the fact of all this historical data we have. We actually have the data of when we did construction, when this wasn't being used, and we do actually know what it cost. And you can really just compare that with looking forward and sort of seeing how much that would cost. And we did a study, we just did a model of a complex meeting room, and we did it in Revit, we did it with laser scanning, we did clash detection. We had 0 change orders on this extremely complicated ceiling, and we compared it to a previous one where in a similar scenario, there had been $60,000 of change orders in a similar scenario. And so there's no way that the BIM cost $60,000. So you can do these studies, you can try and quantify it, but sometimes it's a leap of faith. And sometimes it's just really, it's like that belief knowing that these things are improving collaborative nature of projects. They are improving communication. They are making things safer. They are improving productivity. They are making things predictable. And just by knowing this, by putting that investment in, you're going to capture a much better product. And not only that, I think the one element that we have to talk about is what does the next workforce want to do, right? Does the next workforce want to be doing these super repetitive, quite frankly, boring tasks? I don't think so. I think they want to be moving forward and growing and using technology and yeah, so big question. I probably spoke too long. I'm excited to hear what other people have to say to it.
It's good. Well, Hamad, maybe we'll go to you next, and maybe you can add to what Libby had to say. How do we measure the success of these new technologies we're incorporating?
Yeah, I think it's a loaded question, to be honest, right? I mean, okay. I don't know, Doug, if I'm going to give you a good answer, but building kind of on what Libby was saying is just that, you know, we have essentially different risk factors and different production factors or methods for each stakeholder that we're working with, right? And each of those different stakeholders bring a piece to that puzzle. So I think the issue that I see is just looking at it holistically of being like, look, we're doing a lot of the planning up front and we're working with the end in mind. But it's hard for us to kind of push that because if you look at our traditional contract environment and financial setups and all of that, it doesn't really foster that environment. Whereas if I was to go outside of our construction industry and say I was trying to, you know, put together, you know, whether it's just, you know, something like a cup or a phone or even, you know, it could be a car. When you're going out and you're kind of getting these stakeholders in place, they actually expect you to use that technology up front. And so what we're trying to do is not only kind of change the way that all these different stakeholders with different responsibilities and contractual obligations are working, we're changing the underlying culture as well. So measuring the success is not going to be as easy, but one thing is if you hear it from the boots on the ground or the people on the site that, hey, you know what, this made an impact. I built a project previously, now I built it with this. I'm going to keep this with me going forward kind of thing. So that is kind of the most bottom line. Hey, if the people building it are saying they need it, we know it's working. The other ones, which are a little bit harder to do, which was alluded by Libby, like within the VDC and BIM realm, is you don't know how many issues you're going to have with that particular group working on that project, right? So I could have an A team, for example, whether it's from Turner, EllisDon, or, you know, Bockstael, it doesn't matter, but like the A team working on the same project, or we could have, you know, a newer kind of generation of people with less experience working on the same project, and it'd go completely differently. But when we bring that technology to the table, it kind of closes a lot of that gap of communication, understanding, experience, and brings everyone to the same page. So it's essentially you're paying an insurance policy, which maybe you'll have to pay the deductible, maybe you won't, you don't know until that happens. But you know, if something does go sideways, you have the right process, workflows, and tools in place to help you with that. So not giving you an ROI answer, Doug, but that's how I look at it.
I wasn't expecting, but that's awesome. Dan, I know you've implemented some new things like since COVID and especially, and maybe you can tell us how that's impacting and how you're able to measure that success.
Yeah, I think, I mean, you alluded to at the start, like there is an expectation that to a certain degree, it is a cost of doing business, but I think there is an expectation, there's some kind of return on it. Doesn't always have to be cost-based. I mean, the reality is it's similar to our projects. I mean, the things you're always looking at is it's cost, quality, schedule, risk, safety. You know, is it making you better in all of those areas, or at least a lot of those areas? So really, you know, from our standpoint, it's kind of that you can dig into the details and look at the specifics, but really we tend to take more of that sort of 1,000-foot approach and say, you know, is this adding value? Is it making us better? Are we continuously improving, keeping up with times? There's aspects of attracting talent, you know, similar to some of the things alluded to before, like people don't want to do some of these boring sort of tasks. So, you know, all of those things add value in different ways. So it's looking at that from that highest level. And then also, you know, when it comes down to it is, yeah, are people seeing the value? I think that's been touched on, but like, do people want to use it? There's always that adoption period and, you know, sort of going through that change management or organizational change aspects of big technology adjustments. But, you know, once you're there, you know, if you've got big adoption, you've got, you know, and some of the ones where it's client facing too, if you got clients, you know, asking for this technology down the road, then it's obviously a win.
Right. Well, so as much as new technology is making inroads, you're all implementing some new changes. The next question is, what are the greatest challenges that you feel contractors need to be aware of when implementing new technology tools or platforms into their projects? So Hamad, maybe we'll start with you on this one. And where are the challenges in incorporating new technologies?
Yeah, I mean, one size doesn't fit all, but generalizing here, I think the first and foremost is depending on what the project is set up for. Some projects and clients already have the appetite, so maybe a little bit easier to get that rolled out. But for the sake of this, let's just say it's average project and that doesn't make an impact. Some of the barriers are definitely going to be more of your workforce related, getting that buy-in and getting the boots on the ground and the, you know, PMs, coordinators, super field folks to use it. Some of it is going to be more so to get the broader project team to really understand and leverage the tools properly. So what I mean is a lot of times, you know, you could see people saying, okay, we'll do BIM. And what they're trying to do is just pump out a model so that they can hit a check mark on a contractual deliverable, as opposed to what was alluded earlier, like, okay, the point is for all of us to work earlier, collaboratively work through it so we get to that zero change order kind of phase of the project, right? So it's really trying to get everyone to understand that this technology or process isn't to put you individually out on the line and say you're not doing your job and look, all of these mistakes, maybe some people might call them, that you've done, as opposed to more of a, hey, look, we've got to get this done as a team and let's identify all of this stuff proactively using these tools. What's the workflow that will work for you and for the project? And kind of having those, I don't want to call them kind of social conversations, but they're more social at times than technical, right? Because you're kind of dealing with that workflow aspect and, hey, I'm not comfortable trying this tool on this project because XYZ, and kind of going over that methodology. Essentially, it is to a part upskilling your workforce, but also your partners. So whether it's your subcontractors or your clients, I feel like the onus is on us here to really upskill the industry and those we're working with. So.
Yep, very good. Libby, in terms of getting, I guess it's almost getting buy-in or just implement the challenge of getting these new tools to be used in projects?
Changing culture. I mean, it's a tough
Yeah.
one, right? We all see it in every industry. I think COVID actually helped a lot. It forced a change in the way we do things. And I think people are saying, it turned 20 years into 5 years. But I want to sort of build a little bit on what Hamad was saying. I mean, I think there's a few things in the industry, certainly when in the large contracts, I'll start with the large contracts, you see your healthcare, your hospitals, things like this. We are seeing a pull, and we're seeing a pull from the clients to say, hey, you must use this level of bin. Sometimes they don't even know what they've written in there, but you're sort of trying to figure out what they're doing, but they're trying to predict into the future, right? So they're saying in 10 years, we want to connect our building into the Internet of Things, right? We want to have things accessible from different devices. So we know we need to do some form of pre-planning to build that into the project at the very early stage. We might actually use technologies that don't exist yet. So how do you do that? So there's definitely a pull happening from, I'd say, sort of the fairly sophisticated building side. But I think that on the I want to kind of say the boots on the ground side of it, because it's been alluded to, that's really where this happens. And I always say dress up the beast. And what I mean is, and you can tell I have 3 kids, right? But what I mean is take that thing that's really scary and, put it in a clown suit or dress it up into something that's familiar, if clowns scare you. But, make it fun, make it easy, and make it work. So don't go for the most complicated thing. Choose some of the simple technologies. Microsoft is a pretty simple platform right now, and it's offering so many opportunities. And I think people who weren't comfortable with technology are now using Teams, using platforms that are simple, that are easy. And that's just a step. iPads, and as technology develops, every superintendent on our sites has an iPad and they know how to use it. So once you get used to using an iPad on site, and then you say, oh, here's this extra app, here's this extra layer, and look what it can do. Look how fun it is. Look how we can work with it. And you start to sort of pull people into the process and pull them into that tech adoption to the point where they start pulling it. They say, oh, well, we did this here and that was really effective and I saved time and it made things easier. I want that, or I want to try the next newest technology. What is that? But I think it really comes to cultural change, and I don't think it can be forced. I think it's this whole lean concept, right? You have to pull things and yeah, dress up the beast.
Dress up the beast. Very nice. Dan, are you dressing up the beast at Bockstael?
Good point. I think we've done that a couple of times. I think, maybe a bit of an angle I'll take on this as far as, what to be aware of when implementing new technology is more around sort of that business process. And, a bit of what's happening is just the explosion of options that are out there when considering a different technology. If you're a medium or small size firm, you're not building something in-house, you're kind of looking for that solution that you can bring in right away. Well, whether it's, VDC or estimating or project management or all those kinds of things. I mean, you're looking at 5 or 6 options. There's new ones coming out every day. So be prepared to go through a bit of analysis paralysis and know you got to work through it and eventually just go with something and try to make it work. And then on the actual implementation side, I mean, it is a lot of work. It's never as smooth as sort of what you would imagine or what you think. Especially with some of these sort of cross-platform integration, there's tools that are talking to each other or working with each other. I mean, I always found there's always, a bit of an extra step in there as far as that making it actually work. It's never seamless. And then even on the onboard period, when you've decided to go ahead with something, I mean, you need a very specific plan, an action plan with timelines, prepare your staff, training sessions. Procore was a good example with us. I mean, we hit 2 years, but there was probably, we seconded one of our people to I think it was 6 to 8 months sort of basically Procore coordinator, Procore onboard, Procore integrator role for 6 to 8 months. And that was a lot of pre-planning. There was 3 to 4 months of work before we could even roll it out, and then a couple months of training side by side with all of our staff members. That's an organization. Our office is about 45 people and 25 superintendents. So I mean, different scales of company take a whole lot more or less work potentially, but just be prepared for it not to work right away. You know, the day you order the software, there's a lot of planning, process change that needs to go into it. And then, yeah, that adoption also from third parties. I mean, even with Procore, you know, you can show your clients sort of everything that they can do and see within the program. They go, oh, that's really great. So can you just PDF that and send it to me once a week, kind of thing? It's like, that's not the point, but you know, we'll get there. It's sort of continuing to push the envelope with it.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. You know, I also wanted to ask people and it's been mentioned today, talking about Internet of Things and things like artificial intelligence, machine learning opportunities. I'm just wondering if there's examples you guys can point to today in the construction space that are using these kinds of, you know, implementing this vision, if you will. Hamad, maybe we'll start with you.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's a lot of offerings now compared to a few years ago. And I think, you know, maybe we're still a little bit early, but for some of the AI stuff, something that really has captured my eye recently is a platform that can ingest your drone data and your design information and then use AI to actually analyze that. So the platform is called AI Clearing. So that's one out in the marketplace right now, and they're kind of developing that. From a machine learning standpoint, there's a lot going on too, but one of the things that really caught my attention was Bechtel, Bentley is actually developing their own ML system in-house right now. And so they're kind of, you know, putting their money into that. So, you know, I don't have any direct experience that I can share with you right off the bat, but those are some. And then also Pipe, PYPE, which kind of ingests your specs and all those kind of documents and kind of gives you a analysis of what's what, is another kind of automation and AI based platform that's already in the marketplace. So, you know, those are some of those. When it comes to the sensors and Internet of Things, we do have a department at EllisDon, you know, the digital and data services, which that group is kind of running the smart buildings, the dashboards, and connecting the sensors and your building kind of backbone to a single pane of glass for building operations. So, you know, that's kind of already there. But when it comes to maybe more of that, you know, Apple version of, if you want to call it that plug and play, I think we're starting to see a lot of companies come up. So, you know, a Canadian company that recently I saw, Sensor Up, is one of them. Another one is Calgary based. They've been doing some great work too, but they just ingest the data and give you a platform to play with it. Verum is their name. So these are some of these kind of AI, IoT kind of, you know, future platforms and companies out there. Unfortunately, I don't have any direct data I can just share and be like, hey, this is what we found by leveraging X or Y, Z system. But yeah, just thinking about that. And then the last thing I think that's really interesting for us is reality capture. So, you know, laser scanning, drones, 360 photos, all of that has become a little bit more cost effective if you go on the lower end of things. It may not give you that high caliber or maybe, you know, quality, maybe if you need millimeter accuracy, but it's gotten to a level where it's fast, quick, affordable, and you don't have to break the bank to get into it and start proving out whether it works or not. So I think that's a few there. I don't know, Libby or Dan, if you want to jump.
Yeah, Libby, AI, machine learning.
Sure. I mean, I think as Hamad said, we're sort of, maybe this is the next step. Maybe this is the next space we're going. We have a lot of technology. We talked about the amount of data and the data analysis. And honestly, we have more technology. We have more data than we know what to do with in this industry right now. And so I do think that building the algorithms, having the tools, you know, for machines to deal with this data, I think just simplifying the question a little bit, maybe, one of the tools that we're finding really useful is a very simple one, is Power BI. And Power BI, I mean, it's just a Microsoft tool, but it can take large volumes of data and it can auto-generate reports, right? You feed the data, it can keep feeding this updated report. So as long as you're updating your capture from whatever the source, You can push it into this report, program it, and it comes out pretty simply. And it's simple, right? Anyone, maybe not anyone, but most people can handle a Power BI report. And so it's pretty incredible now. You know, when I came into this industry 15 years ago, I remember having to put together deficiency reports and seeing how challenging that was. And now we do this with AI, right? This is just something that's simple. We wouldn't think of going back to an Excel spreadsheet for this anymore, just because it's tedious and you never know what's done and you're never on top of it. And someone's working on an old report and all these different things. So I think sometimes we think of it as these scary words and this scary thing, and really we're just trying to solve problems. And yes, as technology gets better and as receptions get better and as 5G expands, we're going to have more and more and more things putting out data and more things that we can analyze and learn from. But I still think we need to think about, you know, Douglas Adams said it, right? What's the question?
Yeah. Dan?
Yeah, I don't think I have a whole lot to add on that one, other than I think Internet of Things is kind of the big one we're seeing as potential game changer for sites, you know, at that potential across the portfolio level. Like, it seems like it's becoming more and more scalable as far as sensors, QR codes, all those types of things, feeding into databases and automating the tracking process in a lot of scenarios, and a lot of the sort of daily routine stuff can put into that. We're also seeing it, you know, come to the forefront in a lot of building design as far as smart buildings and the like. So it's a bit of changing what we build to, and kind of upping the level of sophistication in some of the builds and some of the contractors needing to work on some of the projects. So that's definitely one we're keeping a close eye on.
Okay, very good. I'm going to transition to some of the questions. We've got a few coming across here. So let me begin with this one from Eric. I see plenty of engineering tech tools, field management platforms, and of course, drones and the like for surveying. We as an industry are moving in the right direction. Positive. But it seems the larger elephant in the room these days are materials management. Materials commonly account for majority of the project cost, yet we always see a gap in managing these in other realms that the old Excel spreadsheet. Is there an app or platform which you have seen to help wrangle in this component and digitize or even tackle the whole e-ticket, e-ordering realm across the board? Dan, I might start with you because I think you might have touched on something like this.
Yeah, I touched on Quote to Me. I think there was a question about that as well, as far as what the software was. But so that's a procurement digitization platform. They actually started out as basically just a quoting platform for equipment rentals, but they've kind of realized there's a much bigger fish to fry, and I think a lot of opportunity in the market around the full procurement process. So where it's at now is basically, you know, from the site level, our superintendents can basically put in their material requests through the platform. You know, it's app-based or online. It goes to Quote to Me. Quote to Me actually handles the vendor outreach, so going out to get the quotes. We can provide, you know, we provide your own vendors, they have theirs, but they'll actually go out and collect the quotes for you, you know, based on different parameters. It could be, you know, different levels or number of quotes required based on the size of the order or whatnot. And then those quotes come back through the platform. You select your vendor, and there's actually even the option to run the procurement through Quote to Me. Like, you can actually order the material and centralize your billing into them as well. So really a streamlining process as far as bringing full procurement departments kind of into a third-party service. But yeah, we were involved in the pilot process with that, and it's coming along quite well. It's now, they've now rolled out to a complete service offering.
Okay. Does anyone else have a answer to that question? Materials?
Should just note on top of that, it still hasn't resolved the sort of supply chain issues to a certain extent. I mean, you can ask about times and all that, but it has helped with tracking to a certain degree. But you still, I think there is some opportunity there. We talk about it as far as, you know, data collection, sort of integrating the supply chain in some way on the tracking front here. But it's probably a long way down the road as far as suppliers being willing to share that data and feed it into some kind of system where you can live track. But yeah, lead times are still sort of constantly an issue.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of apps that come to mind. I don't know if it'll help the person asking the question, but they could definitely take a look at it. One is Roombix, RHU MBIX or something like that. And that's kind of, I think their focus is on, materials and capturing all of that. Another one could be something like Asset Panda or something similar, which may not give you as much of that control from the procurement side, but would give you more of that tracking and kind of tracking your material, equipment, whatever you want. So there's tools and platforms like that, but I think part of the key, which Dan mentioned, is really it's got to be a process that's implemented that everybody's following. I mean, you could throw in one of those platforms and it still may not make a difference. Or you could be working off, the Excels, but using the Microsoft Power Suite, sort of, how Power BI, Libby mentioned, but you could probably make something with that, which wouldn't be too sophisticated, but would give you what you need. And the workflow is something the company already has, if that makes sense, right? So those are two apps that came to my mind, and hopefully that helps with that.
Thank you. We have another question. Dan, this one's just for you, I think. Did Procore provide assistance in onboarding and ramp up?
For sure. I mean, they provide you an account executive, sort of a certain number of months and all that. Like, there's a fair bit of customization that goes into the process. How do you want to set up your projects? We developed a bit of a training package, which they assisted with, but the actual training implementation and that, you really need to go beyond sort of that introductory level that they provide. They'll get you started, but to really sustain, say that you need a support system around the platform.
Right. I have a question here from Tanis. Does anyone have insight into what financial accounting or job costing platforms your companies use? Happy with the platform? ? We are looking for a new solution to integrate the estimating to construction cost tracking functions. Anyone have some insight into that side?
Part of what we have is an in-house system called Gate3, which kind of connects to a costing kind of platform, but then also on the estimating side right now, they are working with a platform called CostX. So that is kind of where our approach is right now. We were using something called on-screen takeoff, which is a little bit more traditional, obviously, but now CostX has a little bit more of those functionalities for kind of tracking that stuff, bringing your model in, and so on and so forth. And then our in-house kind of platform, the project management system, obviously gives us that kind of benefit there.
Okay.
We're
Libby?
similar. We also have a project management system. We're an SAP-based company, so it sort of feeds through that. But for, I wouldn't go into that if you're a smaller company. I haven't tried it, but I do know that Procore has developed tools that deal with job costing. Dan, I don't know if you have any perspective on the Procore solution, because I think it's geared more towards most contractors and to simplify that part of the process.
Yeah, so there's kind of different areas you can start and stop with all of this. I guess Procore does have the ability to track job costs, like we do our time sheeting through it. You can do all of your financials through it if you want. But it has integrations with estimating softwares, but it doesn't have built-in estimating capabilities at this stage. From our standpoint, we've looked at this multiple times, and part of the, when we made the decision to go with Procore, part of the bigger discussion, should we look for an all-encompassing program? We made the decision to basically go best in breed, what was best for us for each component of the technology. Looking at trying to go with an enterprise solution for all of it, basically in each situation, there was an area where it didn't quite meet what we were looking for. So we decided to go separate. I mean, it does require, it does create a couple of gaps. The way we work right now, our estimating platform is in-house developed. Our accounting software is actually Jonas Accounting. It's one we've been using for a long time, evaluated different options. When we were looking at, should we change that out, we really found the gaps that we had were addressed by Procore. So we're still looking at, for us, it's a continuous process. I mean, we're looking all the time at potentially how to improve the estimating functions in our end too, more around that data capture functions I was talking about before. There's, as I said, we're evaluating some of the integrations available with Procore and how to streamline that process. But really, when it came down to it, as I said, you kind of got to, I think it's different for each organization, depending on your size, your specialization, even if you're doing a lot of time and material type work versus not, like doing a lot of hard bid versus construction management. Like there's sort of ups and downs for each approach in each platform. So so we decided to break it down and look at each one individually to address each need.
Okay. We have a question from Cindy, who describes herself as a construction and tech lawyer. Thanks for this really interesting panel. Thank you, Cindy. I'm curious how you all are allocating ownership of co-created data/IP and liability for the co-created work, drawings, specs, etc. I appreciate that this is a nerdy lawyer question that may not be of general interest. So would be happy to follow up offline, but can anyone address Cindy's question here?
You're on mute, Libby.
Oh, I was gonna hand it over to you anyway. But I mean, I guess from it's a good question actually, and I think it's one that's the industry's really struggled with for a number of years. Inside the industry, we all know how much sense it makes to have everyone from every different arena working collaboratively to develop the design. But of course, from a risk standpoint, we have to be very careful about who owns it. If something happens, who's liable, who's responsible. I know I've watched this kind of move over the years, and a lot of times it comes down to the contracts and clearly putting together the lines of responsibility. And so even if everybody works on something, there's a single party who's properly accountable, and that party also has the right insurances and things in place to kind of deal with if there was any challenge towards that. We've done that through, like when we do design build, we have the design build contracts that build that in, and they always reference a BIM execution plan and a BIM management plan, which is a document that clearly identifies requirements and responsibilities. I think that's kind of how I'd answer that one.
Anyone else?
I think it's a little tough, but what Libby said is pretty much bang on. Like depending on the contract type, CM, P3, design build, lump sum, I mean the new ones out there that are coming up, IPD, so on and so forth. All of them look at the stakeholdership risk and kind of try and do that. Nothing really addresses it truly as like an integrated team. Like design build tries doing that, IPD does that, but people still have their hesitation. So one thing, the lawyer question is making me think is, we're trying to get to that holistic manufacturing process of design for manufacturing assembly, essentially. But we're doing it with contracts that are for lump sum, hard bid, CM, so on and so forth. So I think that is the issue, is we're trying to do construction technology, BIM, VDC in an environment that isn't reflective of what that truly calls for. So we're going to have those issues. That's why those disclaimers are there, all of that. But if we can get to that point where everyone understands that what we're doing is for production, so essentially your model is going to be used to create the drawings. Your model is going to be used to create the shop drawings, so on and so forth, as opposed to the current kind of caveat we all get is, here's my model, but look at the shop drawing. Or here's my model, but as a design consultant, look at my drawing, right? That will be addressed when that comes in place. So that's my opinion on it. But also from what I've seen is, you can have the best contract type, but you're still going to have hesitation because that culture isn't what anyone's used to, if that makes sense. So
Yeah. Okay. Dan, did you have anything to add on that topic?
No, I think just from our perspective, I think, like the vast majority of projects, we don't see this coming into a lot of the discussions, but yeah, on some of the large projects, particularly with integrated forms like IPD or, design build, there's usually a discussion, at the contractual stage and work into there, but certainly insurance discussions on an annual basis with our broker.
Okay. Here's a final question I'm going to throw at you guys, and then we're going to say farewell. Do you have a specific team or person within your company reviewing and looking for new tools and platforms in the construction tech sector? And do you attend specific events to look for new and innovative solutions? Where are you finding things today? I'll open that. Hamad, we'll start with you, and then everyone can chime in a little.
definitely. I mean, I have a little bit of an interest naturally in this stuff too. So for me, I just tend to look at it. So I kind of run into that no matter what. But as an organization, we really do have, the digital and data engineering kind of group is what EllisDon calls it. In there, we have several different groups. So the VDC group is one, our traditional IT is one, and so on and so forth. So we have strategic software selection group committee. Apart from that too, our team. So everybody on site and all across EllisDon is, kind of given a little bit of feedback. Hey, there's something I've heard about, we should check out. And then lastly, of course, is our organizations that we kind of partake in and kind of some of the different communities. So of course, on site and several other organizations that are in the digital kind of building community and within Canada as well. So like the Canada BIM Council and some of those kind of things. So looking around there, you kind of generally see it. And then also, as funny as this may sound to some people, LinkedIn, you never know, people may connect with you, send you a message. We have Hilti, I think, watching this right now. I mean, Darren and his team just sent me a message randomly. We saw everything that Hilti was up to with their robotics and all of that. Really made it kind of easy to learn. And that was something that we were focused on, but maybe not as much. So just being open and being able to let people reach you as well as an organization and individual. So yeah, that's how we're kind of going about it.
Awesome. Libby, where are you finding new things?
I think similar to what Hamad's saying. I mean, Turner as a company has an innovation group, and they have people on the ground all the time looking for the best tools. And where do they look? They look both to startups, both to industry, to other industries, and but one of the biggest places they look is to the field, right? What problem is everyone trying to solve, and what tools are people bringing? Because it's not a shortage of apps, of tools, of technology. There's no shortage of that. It's a shortage of good ones, of easy ones, of ones that connect well to each other and connect well to other systems that are already in place. So that group is really looking to those. Every year we have an innovation summit where we bring speakers in from all over the world. It's obviously internal, but and we also, of course, have an innovation competition where we ask for innovations from the various, from everyone on the field, and we sort of take those and then scale up the best of those. But just, I think in a more general, I mean, I know that Vancouver is looking to put together an innovation center through the Vancouver Regional Construction Association, and they're working on that, I think, right now. There's a tech summit. When we were in person, I used to go to the tech summit, and while it wasn't about construction, it's the same technology. So it's just applied to a different, it was a general tech summit, but you can take a lot of the technologies in it and we'll apply back to construction. I agree with LinkedIn. I think there's a lot of great information on there, and some of the vendors for sure. And then again, also the lean groups, the BIM groups. In our office, we have, just in Vancouver, we have kind of a core group of people that's always looking for a better way to do things. And we meet once a month, grab a beer and just kind of chat about it. So often that way.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Dan, are there events you go to, or is it beer with your mates?
All of the above, I think. So yeah, we've been big on the lean front for a long time. I think it's been 8 or 9 years. The LCI conferences has always been really big for us, even the ones in the US are actually sort of on a larger scale and potentially, yeah, and attract a lot of sort of high quality presentations and the like. We also attend the LCIC conferences in Canada every year. There's a series as well of conferences in the US we've been going to the last few years. One I've attended myself was an advancing pre-construction conference put on by a conference organizer called Hanson Wade, but they're pretty tech focused. A lot of these, a lot of the sponsors are tech companies. You tend to see a lot of it. But I think what's been important to us, even going to these conferences and that is sort of getting past that infomercial and really talking to to the vendors, but also to others that are actually using it. Is it actually, what are you using it for? How is it actually working out? So a lot of it's around the network. We've partnered with different companies across Canada on different projects at different times, and that's actually created a lot of dialogue around what's working for you and whatnot. So sort of that peer group type approach has been probably the best feedback on any given platform. So yeah, within our office, it is driven by our owner and management team, the various departments that sort of see these needs and look for the solutions. So I think that's typically where these types of approaches are coming from with our group. We do have a continuous improvement coordinator that takes on a lot of the sort of maintenance of these systems as far as Procore and our lean tools and that. But it's more around maintaining, but the implementation really takes that drive from the top to make it happen. Yeah, I think that's about it.
Okay, awesome. Thank you all so much for your time today. And to everyone who's been participating, who sent in questions and who's viewed our panel today. Again, I'd like to thank our sponsors for this event, Autodesk and GC Pay. And again, thank you to our panelists and everyone who joined. That's it for today. Till next time, goodbye.